Imagine waking up one morning to find your entire family gone. Not just missing, gone. No note, no explanation, just an eerie silence where laughter and life once filled your home. Now imagine discovering that the person responsible for this nightmare wasn't a stranger, but the man who was supposed to protect them, a Sunday school teacher, a church deacon, a man who prayed every night and preached about salvation. This is the story of John Emil List, a man who didn't just kill his family, he believed he was saving their souls, and what he did next will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about faith, family, and the darkness that can hide behind a smiling face. In the quiet town of Westfield, New Jersey, a seemingly ordinary Sunday school teacher committed one of the most horrifying crimes in American history. John Emil List, a devout church deacon, murdered his entire family, his wife, mother, and 3 children, in cold blood. But his reason for doing so was even more chilling. He believed he was saving their souls from the apocalypse. This is the story of how a man of faith became a monster, and how it took nearly 2 decades to bring him to justice. John List was a man who appeared to have it all, a respected member of his community. He was a Sunday school teacher and a deacon at the Reformed Church in America. He lived in a grand Victorian home with his wife, Helen, their 3 children, John Jr., Patricia, and Frederick, and his elderly mother, Alma. To his neighbors, he was a quiet, religious man who kept to himself. But beneath that calm exterior, John List was hiding a dark secret. The List family was struggling financially. John had lost his job, and the family was drowning in debt. But instead of seeking help, John turned to his faith for answers. He became obsessed with the idea that the world was descending into sin and that the apocalypse was near. Convinced that his family's souls were in danger, he made a horrifying decision. He would kill them to save them from eternal damnation. On November 9, 1971, John List put his plan into action. What followed was a crime so calculated, so cold-blooded, that it would shock the nation and leave investigators baffled for years. John List wasn't always a man on the edge. In fact, for much of his life, he appeared to be the picture of stability. Born in 1925, he grew up in a strict Lutheran household where religion was the cornerstone of daily life. His father, John Frederick List, was a domineering figure who instilled in young John a deep fear of sin and a belief in the literal interpretation of the Bible. This upbringing would shape John's worldview and ultimately his downfall. As an adult, John List seemed to be living the American dream. He served in the Army during World War II, earned a degree in business administration, and married Helen Morris, a woman who shared his devout religious beliefs. Together they had 3 children, John Jr., Patricia, and Frederick. But beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to form. John List was a man who valued control above all else. He was meticulous in his habits. From the way he dressed, always in a suit and tie, to the way he managed his finances. But in the late 1960s, that control began to slip. List lost his job as an accountant, and the family's financial situation grew dire. They were forced to sell their home and move into a smaller house. But even that wasn't enough to stave off the mounting debt. List's pride wouldn't allow him to ask for help, and his religious beliefs convinced him that the world was becoming too sinful to provide any real solutions. As the pressure mounted, List's behavior became increasingly erratic. He began isolating himself from friends and family, spending hours alone in his study, poring over religious texts. He became obsessed with the idea that the apocalypse was near, and that his family's souls were in danger. Helen, meanwhile, was struggling with her own demons. She had been diagnosed with a chronic illness that left her bedridden for days at a time. The stress of caring for her, along with the financial strain, pushed John to the brink. But it wasn't just the external pressures that drove John List to murder. it was also his own twisted sense of duty. In his mind, he wasn't killing his family, he was saving them. He believed that by taking their lives, he was sparing them from a world of sin and ensuring their place in heaven. On the morning of November 9, 1971, John List put his plan into action. He started with Helen, shooting her in the back of the head as she sat at the kitchen table. Next, he went upstairs to his mother's room, where he shot Alma in the face. When the children returned home from school, they had no idea what awaited them. John Jr. was the first to die, followed by Patricia and Frederick. List later claimed that he had spared Frederick until last, because he wanted to give the boy a chance to pray before he died. After the murders, List meticulously cleaned the house, arranged the bodies in sleeping bags, and turned off the utilities to make it seem as though the family had gone on a trip. He even left a note for his pastor, explaining his actions and asking for forgiveness. But there was one thing List didn't account for: the human instinct to seek the truth. When the police finally entered the List home weeks later, they found a scene so chilling, so calculated, that it would haunt them for years to come. For nearly 2 decades, John List lived a double life. After fleeing Westfield, he settled in Denver, Colorado, where he assumed the identity of Robert Peter Clark. He found work as an accountant, remarried, and even joined a Lutheran church. To his new neighbors, he was just a quiet, hard-working man who kept to himself. But beneath the surface, List was a man haunted by his past. He rarely spoke about his previous life, and when he did, he lied. He told his new wife, Dolores, that he had been widowed and that his children had died in a car accident. Meanwhile, back in Westfield, the List family murders remained unsolved. The police had no leads, no suspects, and no idea where John List had gone. The case grew cold, and the people of Westfield were left to wonder what had happened to the quiet, religious man who had once been their neighbor. But in 1989, everything changed. A former co-worker of List's was watching an episode of America's Most Wanted when she saw a forensic sketch of the suspect. It looked eerily familiar. She immediately called the show's tip line, and within days, the FBI had a new lead. John List was arrested in Richmond, Virginia, on April 1, 1989, nearly 18 years after the murders. When authorities confronted him, List didn't deny his crimes. Instead, he calmly explained that he had killed his family to save their souls. He believed the world was becoming too sinful and that his loved ones were at risk of eternal damnation. In his mind, he had done the right thing, but the jury didn't see it that way. John List was found guilty of 5 counts of murder and sentenced to life in prison. He died behind bars on July 21, 1998, at the age of 72. The case of John Emil List is a chilling reminder of how far someone can go when driven by extreme beliefs. It's also a testament to the power of persistence and the role that ordinary people can play in solving even the most baffling crimes. John List's story is one of the most disturbing in true crime history. A man who was supposed to protect his family instead destroyed them, all in the name of saving their souls. But what's even more chilling is how close he came to getting away with it. For 18 years, List lived a double life, free from the consequences of his actions. It wasn't until a single tip from a vigilant citizen that he was finally brought to justice. This case shows just how important it is for the public to stay involved in solving crimes. Without that one phone call, John List might have never been caught. But even after his capture, questions remain. What drove a man of faith to commit such unspeakable acts? Was he truly motivated by religion, or was there something darker at play? And how did he manage to evade capture for so long? The List family murders left a lasting impact on the town of Westfield and the world of true crime. They remind us that evil can hide behind the most ordinary faces, and that justice, no matter how long it takes, will always find a way. And here's the thing, this case is just the tip of the iceberg. There are countless other stories out there, each one more shocking than the last. Stories of people who thought they could outsmart the law, only to be brought down by the smallest of clues. Stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat, wondering what could possibly happen next. So what do you think? Was John List a man driven by faith, or was he something far more sinister? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're as fascinated by true crime as I am, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because next we're diving into another case that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about human nature. Until then, stay curious and stay safe.